Good evening and welcome to the Four Lads Sunday Show. Tonight we'll obviously be looking back mainly at the result against Motherwell today and asking what that means for the title race and if we have any chance of bringing the trophy back to Ibrox. But before I do that, I need to give a quick mention to all the sponsors here at Four Lads. Rhino Express, Clydeview Fire Protection and Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions, CSD Air Conditioning, Candid and RYDC, as well as our partners over at Black Rooster and Art of Gold. We really do appreciate all the support that you've given us over the course of this season and previous seasons. So please make sure you go and check them all out. Now, the ever-present alongside me when Scotty is not hosting. Mark, how are you feeling after that today, mate?
Not great, mate. Not gonna lie. Given the build-up to today, I was actually quite excited, but sadly, that pitch that I watched today has sadly put a big damper in my mood.
It's amazing how a game of football can change the complexion of your weekend. Yes, I'm looking forward. Well, not looking forward. At least we have each other to get us through, and we can treat this a bit like a kind of therapy session, which leads me on to a very special guest that we've got tonight. One of my favourite podders in the Four Lads station, the stable. Andrew, how are you doing, pal?
Not great. It's there's no point in trying to sugarcoat it or anything. It's a gutting result today. Really disappointing, and especially given that so many points in that game, we had it in our own hands, and we still contrived to throw it away. So, yeah, deeply disappointed. The only thing I would say is that I'm not going to try and predict the rest of this season because I couldn't have predicted it so far.
Yeah, no, I think trying to predict anything this season would win you a couple of £1 million probably if you could actually get them all right. But I guess I think, result aside, I think the biggest disappointment for me, and we'll obviously touch on it as we go through the game and stuff, was probably more the performance in that first half. We've seen it countless times where, away against Hibs, that first half at Falkirk. And it's a bit of probably deja vu for us, Mark, because we were on for that Falkirk game where, the first 25 minutes today was probably as gutless as you could see from a team chasing a title. And if you were sitting there not knowing what the league kind of table looked like, you'd say it was Motherwell that were actually the team probably chasing a title. I thought in that first 25 minute period, we looked really disjointed. There seemed to be a lack of energy. Motherwell were playing through our press in inverted commas because it was a bit half-arsed, and midfield was nowhere to be seen. So for us to only be 2-0 down in that first 25 minutes was probably a positive.
Yeah, I think for me, we when we were in the build up to the game and stuff, like I was watching a number of podcasts and stuff, it was a matter of this sticking with two up top. I think we spoke about it as well, Rob, on the last one, just importance with having someone beside your mate and giving Miofsky's performance against Falkirk. You can understand why he's made a starting place today. I think the problem we had was them having that extra man in the middle of the park just totally exposed it throughout. It just gave us a lot of problems to your point there in terms of first 25 minutes. I actually thought the first 3-4 minutes, we actually pressed it pretty well. I thought they put them under a bit of pressure, they kicked out the park, and then we lost our way a little bit. And then from there, our shape kind of went all over the place. And then, as you said, they just totally exposed us. They played through us, and we just could not live with them. It was one where, he's obviously given it to half time and he's made changes, but I think it was pretty clear early on. They were just exploited it and, causing us a lot of problems. And to be fair to them, as you said, they came out at 2, but could have been more just the way, we just did not get a grip of it whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think that's a really fair point, Andrew. Somebody made a really good point in the chat there about the teams that have had more success against Motherwell this season have actually pressed them, and they've pressed them well. And I think a lot of the frustration where I was sitting in the boys around me today was the lack of that during the game, because that they could make a mistake that you could take advantage of. And again, it comes back to all the things we normally ask when your team gets beat: is whose fault is it? And where does that lie? Is this a player issue? And them not doing as the manager and the coaching staff have asked them to do in that first 25 minutes, or is it the fact that the manager and the coaching staff have kind of got the approach for that game all wrong?
It's difficult to say because we've praised Roll at times this season for the work that he's done to bring us back into this title race. And we've said at points during this season, this is the worst Rangers squad we've ever seen before. So on one hand, is it surprising that they have failed to deliver again? Or on the other hand, is it Roll's fault for some of the decisions that he makes during the game? It's difficult to say. I think for me, the disappointing thing was that it's a home game. We should be on the front foot here. And yet so often we either surrendered the initiative or we surrendered possession to Motherwell, whether that's from our own miscontrolled passes or from Jack Butland's poor kickouts. So often we gave the initiative back to Motherwell and never took it for ourselves. And that's the biggest frustration for me, is that when you're playing at home, not being the team that then controls the game, not being the one who imposes yourselves on the game, that's the biggest frustration for me. I cannot really accept that from a Rangers home team performance because it's at home. The crowd's behind you. Everyone in that ground today with, 1,000 or so in the corner aside were motivated and there for that team today. And the team really did not perform to the standard that we should expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like we can blame it on massive injuries, Mark. We knew going into the game we would be without Nadiri and Romans. And from memory, I think that was the team that finished against Falkirk that we started with today. I guess the only big miss that you could say for the starting lineup was probably Mikey Moore. And he could have quite easily come in potentially for Gassama, but he's obviously having a bit of a kind of knock being managed. But that probably was our strongest starting 11 with the players that we had available. So we can't even blame this being a squad issue because a lot of these guys probably would have been first pick.
For me, I think it's not so much the starting 11. I think the problem for me was the lack of desire and commitment on that. To Andrew's point earlier, the noise even in the stadium prior to kickoff, you had flags around the ground, that atmosphere, you could just feel the build up. And you constantly seeing, fans need to do this in terms of stay for 90, sing for 90, etc. It's always expectation on the fans. Well, you've got to flip it back and say, well, what the players giving in return? And for me, that's been 2 games in a row where our first half, and okay, Falkirk might have been slightly different in terms of the conditions, etc., with the wind and the sun. But even with that, we're just miles off it. And the fact that we've had this couple of week break, we've been in Spain, part of this training camp, and we're just miles off it. Second balls, nowhere near it. Just that commitment, just non-existent throughout that first half. And for me, I think to your point there, yeah, it probably was the strongest 11. Maybe consideration with maybe Ant-Man, etc., because I thought he'd done relatively well with the Falkirk game. He's had moments here and there. And we'll probably come to likes of Gassama and stuff. But I think there's going to be questions around a couple of these boys that are in that starting 11 today. For me, they just were giving us nothing.
Yeah, and I think the amount of goals, I guess, Andrew, that we're conceding at the moment is probably a concern. I think that's 8 in the last 3 games, which is a massive, massive dip in the form, considering at one point we had the best defensive record in the league when Danny Rowe had come in. And the last 2 games, we've given the opposition a 2-goal head start on both of them. That's definitely not the form of a title-winning side. And I think one player I certainly know that was mentioned as a potential for the player of the year in our group chat was Butland. But I felt for the first goal, again, haven't been able to watch the game back. I've only seen this live in the stadium. But I thought he was suspect because it looks as though that shot just goes straight through him. So we seem to be conceding schoolboy goals that we really should be doing a hell of a lot better. And if you look at, I know stats can be tweaked away to kind of suit an argument, but if you look at the big chances created in that game, I think Motherwell had 1 clear-cut chance that they created, yet they scored 3 goals. It's just mental. The
frustration from me was there was a stat that got flashed up around 40 minutes which was that Motherwell had 2 shots on target and they'd scored both of them. Right? So that's one side of the picture. Motherwell have 2 shots, they score both of them. Can blame Butland, you can throw questions at the defence for it. But the other side of that was that Rangers had 4 shots, 0 on target. So it's all well and good, like, you can concede goals. That happens. It is unfortunately going to be the way that these games go when we are, in theory, the more potent team. We are going to be playing against a team who are going to counter-attack on us and come back on us. So we know that that's going to happen, that we are only ever going to be cut open by worldies. The disappointment for me is that every time that we went forward, there was just such a lack of cutting edge. And that's with 2 of our strikers up top as well. Neither of whom really looked like they were ever going to be finding the back of the net. Chimiti does get his goal, but that's one of about 5 chances that he had throughout the game. He is not consistent enough and doesn't deliver consistently enough to be relied on for this. So for me, the biggest frustration, I can take the defence. It's going to happen. We know how potent Motherwell can be. And as to your point, Rob, we know how consistent they have been at the back as well. They're a solid defence. It's going to be difficult to play up against them. Throwing away a 2-goal lead against them and then having to dig yourself out of a hole, that's only in the first half as well. You're really digging yourself into a massive hole there, and it is tough to dig yourself out of that. It was just beyond frustrating to me to see us surrender that lead and surrender the advantage, because we did have the advantage coming into this game. We had the crowd behind us. We had a team who were motivated, who before the game at least were saying all the right things, but just truly failed to deliver on the day.
Yeah, I mean, coming at that game, I think Rangers were the form team. We'd been scoring goals, we'd been winning games, 4 on the bounce. And I think that's probably where a lot of fans are really frustrated, Mark, is the fact that, like Andrew said, there were bits of play in that first half where, with a wee bit more desire and hunger from certain players to get forward to support their teammates, could have resulted in maybe us getting back into the game a lot earlier than we actually did. I can only remember one kind of semi-shout for a pen in that first half, and again, haven't seen really a replay back of it, which was the one where Gassama gets fouled on the edge of the box. I don't know if it showed it on TV a little bit more, whether he was in or out, but we can't be playing a home game against Motherwell with all that positivity, and we're looking at like a half pen shout to try and get us back into the game. At some point, the players have got to take responsibility for the chances that they're creating, and the lack of movement, and the lack of hunger, and the lack of desire off the ball.
Absolutely spot on. I think this is a problem. We are relying on like some decisions to go in our favour, and that's how bad that first half was. And to be fair to that first goal, I think if you were to watch it back, Rob, the lack of commitment from our players. Slattery, he plays it wide, he runs into the box, nobody follows him, nobody tracks him. We went through Butland in terms of he could have done better, but there's so many phases throughout that as well where our work rate, I just thought in that first half was just terrible, really, really bad. But then it just sums up sort of where we are across the pitch. Defensively we weren't great. Offensively, we didn't have too much in terms of going in our favour, but we just, I don't know what it was, but for me, I just feel like given how the build-up was to that game, the players should have been absolutely raring to go from the off. And we had a couple of minutes, but other than that, we just gave the crowd absolutely nothing. And chances-wise, just sort of huffed and puffed, but nothing really came of it. But I think it was just, given how far we off, and I think tactically did have a part to play in that, and that could be on Danny Rule himself, but you still need more from the players to play their part.
Yeah, absolutely. And good segue, mate, into potential questions for the manager, because I guess, Andrew, we made 3 subs at half-time. And to be fair, I think a lot of the people around me were actually questioning why the hell we didn't change it before that point, because you could quite clearly see that we were kind of mismatched in midfield. They'd obviously had the extra man in there. They were playing through our alleged press fairly easily the majority of the time. They looked a hell of a lot more comfortable on the ball. From from memory, they were kind of targeting McComa quite a bit, so it wasn't a surprise to see subs being made at half time. But I guess is that a valid point for us to be questioning the manager around the time that it's taken him to kind of tweak things, and the fact that he's made 3 subs at half time. So I guess it's a bit of a recognition from him that he's maybe got the starting personnel, or at least something wrong with the way that he's approached the game in that first half.
It's an interesting one because I think that the subs at half time are not just like for like. You're putting on Mikey Moore for Miovski, you're putting on Tav for McHomer, so obviously there's a change in the defence there as well, with Sterling over to left back. Chikwani for Diamande is the only really like for like sub that you get in that. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a change of personnel, but it's a change of shape and approach as well. Can you do that mid-game? I don't know. I guess you should be able to, especially, for instance, if you've had a week away to plan out and talk through your tactical approaches to games. Maybe you should be working on alternative plans. I don't know. It's a difficult one to say for sure, one way or the other. What I would say is that I don't think that starting 11 worked. And beforehand, I think they could have been questions. Gisama and Asgard are players who have had bright spots for us, but I don't think have ever really been consistently good. Miovski and Chimiti, again, are players who at points have been really good for us. And certainly those two, off the back of their performance in the last competitive game, you would have no question about giving them the starting slots. The frustration for me is that too many of these players think that after they've had a good half of football, that they then go in and think that they've done it. That's the minimum. We're expecting you to be able to play well at all times, not just, occasionally for a half of football when you feel like it. We need players who are able and willing to perform for times. And there are a number of players throughout that 11, not just the ones who came off at half time, who would have no complaints if they had been substituted at half time as well. I thought Nico Raskin was appalling in the first half. I think it was dire. And he's not alone. There are a number of players in there who you could have quite easily pulled off at half time. So it's a difficult one because for me, the manager has got limited abilities in terms of what he can do because he's working with a squad that we've repeatedly said is not up to scratch. It can deliver on occasion. It can deliver in big games on occasion, but it can't do it consistently. And that's the frustration that we have. That's always going to be what we come back to. Like, I don't know where this league title is going to go. I don't think that has been decided today by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't think that this squad right now can be consistent enough to deliver it for us, at least enough for us to feel confident about it or comfortable about it. They could still fall over the line at some point, but I don't think we're going to have a relaxing time of it from now until the end of the season.
I don't think the last few years we've ever had a relaxing time being a Rangers fan, to be honest. But it's I long for the days where it gets a little bit simpler and we can just forget about days like today. But alas, we are where we are. I guess, Mark, just on those changes at half time, I think the only thing that probably surprised the people I was speaking to was that Gisara actually stayed on the pitch at half time, because I thought, again, first half, apart from the foul, felt that he was one of the people guilty of not pressing in the right manner. It was leaving gaps in that left wing spot. He was also then not really protecting Magoma when Motherwell were doubling up on him. He wasn't really dropping back deep enough to be able to support him. For me, his best performances seem to come as an impact player off the bench. Is that me being a bit harsh and critical of him, or is that a fair assumption?
I think evidence is. I think, given what we've seen, the impact he has when he comes off the bench, he's got that pace. He can go by a player, and when teams are tired, could definitely use it to our benefit, given, you can exploit that space. I think the frustrating thing for me with Gassama in particular was the defensive side. I think you're absolutely spot on there, where he wasn't protecting Mahoma at all. But going forward, like he just, the ball was poor. He wasn't direct, and the Motherwell fullback, wasn't the quickest. But how often did he go down on the outside to try and go by and get something in the box? Never happened. And I think that's a frustrating part. And you'll see other moments where he can go by 2-3 boys, bit of magic, and before you're like, we've got a player here. But I think the frustrating part, I get he's a young lad and stuff, but at the same time, it's that inconsistency is probably the most frustrating part. So no, I don't think you're wrong in terms of I'm having that impact off the bench. I think, given what we've seen, it's pretty clear that he does have that impact. However, when he's starting games, it's not happening enough for my liking. I don't think he's having that impetus from the off and getting at players. And today, there's quite a bit of space there at times for giving away Murrow hitting us on a counter-attack when we're getting the ball back, and we just were not exploiting it at all. And, how often did he go on the outside to try and go by and put some deliveries in the box? Just not existent.
Yeah, absolutely right. So it's going to be interesting to see how we line up for the next game against Hearts. But it wasn't all doom and gloom for a period of time there. It actually looked like we were going to get away with it. 6 minutes into the second half, and it was a much better start to that half. I can't really remember the face of play, to be honest. The only thing I can really remember, Andrew, is Chimiti's finish, and it was a really well taken goal. That's the type of thing we want to see, where he's got a sniff and it hits the back of the net. It gives us a really early goal in that second half, but more importantly, I think it gave the stadium a little bit of belief. The noise came back, and we felt actually we can go and get level and hopefully go and win this game.
No, the fans have always been there for this team. There were boos at half time. Rightly so, in my opinion, because the performance the first half was abject. We get ourselves back into the game on the 50th minute, and then we continue to do that on the 70th minute as well. Like, we pull ourselves back into this game. The frustration is that we don't capitalise on that. We don't push forward and then go forward and win the game. And, Motherwell are always going to hit us on the break, but they had been doing that for the entire game. It should not have been surprising that they are going to have opportunities. I think Chimiti's goal is really well taken. It is really good. But again, it is that, okay, well, you took that one, but then you had like 3 others that you didn't take. That is, I think we will still inexplicably make money in Chimiti. But he would be one of the first names on the list for going out the door come the summer, because I do not think he is consistent enough, and I do not think he is someone you can rely on to get you enough goals that matter at this point. We get goals from him, and he has scored goals in big games, really important goals for us as well. But he doesn't seem to be able to deliver it consistently enough, and that's the biggest problem for me.
Yeah, and I think that's the frustration with him as a player, Mark, because again, my timeline in my head for the game is a bit scrambled. As I say, there's no chance I'm going to be watching the highlights of that game back. But there is a cracking chance. I can't remember if it's when it's at 2-1 or if it's at 2 each, where really good phase of play actually. And I think somebody does a step over or a dummy for Chimiti. He could quite easily take a touch to compose himself and then get the shot away, but he tries the first time shot as if he's going into the top right corner and just completely and utterly blazes it over the bar. And that's the difference. I think we spoke on, everybody's probably spoke on this network about that, where these are the types of games where you need your striker that if he gets a sniff of a chance like that, he's either got to hit the target or he's got to hit the back of the net. There's no chance that he should be blazing it over. And then he's going to have an even better chance later on in the game, I think, probably to put us 3-2 ahead, where the Motherwell keeper kind of gets a foot to it, and then it drops to Moore, and Moore sclaffs his lines as well. And I think that's the really frustrating thing for me today, is that it's not like we didn't have chances to win that game today. Again, it just comes down to that lack of quality, I guess, in that final third, which is the thing that's really cost us for the majority of the season.
Yeah, in all fairness, I think there's been a number. Probably Asgard one as well. I think he's about 8-10 yards out. It comes across to him, and he's put it wide over the bar. It's just that composure, and I think to Chermiti, he's just one of these players, isn't he? He's, he can come up with a moment of brilliance. Talk of the town. Everyone thinks he's brilliant, and then. I think that one has came across with the dummy and stuff. I think you're right. He's got to take a touch, compose his cell, and set his cell up. The ball's got a bit too much pace for him, and that's going to be a difficult one to take on first time. But again, it's that decision making when you're in that moment, isn't it? And then he's one at the end as well, where the goalie's made a good save, but you think of his first goal, how he's in one-on-one with goal, he's put it past him quite composed. It's just that inconsistency. I think to Andrew's point, I think we will make money on him, but I think it's clear. Put in perspective, probably where we could have been to where we are. There is moments like that in games this season where they draws could have been wins and chances have came our way. Just a bit more quality in that final third could just be the difference. And I think for me, he's still a young lad. This is his first real big season in terms of playing a number of games. And as I said, he's had moments of brilliance throughout, but there is a frustration when watching Chermiti because he can go by a couple of boys as well, similar to Gassama. And then it bounces off him, hits off his arse. You're like, who is this guy? So it's one of these, and you're going to get that with inexperience. I get it, but then when you pay £8 million for a player, that expectation has to be there as well. Given that's a lot of money. I know Steve had said before in terms of we'd be quite happy to spend on others, etc. But put in perspective with the Scottish League, it's still a lot of money for us. And in return, what you'd expect for that would be, a 20-25 goal scoring striker, at least for that sort of money in comparison to what we paid in the past.
And I think Andrew, there's a number of comments about how we've spent 40 million quid and we should do a hell of a lot better. I think we as fans also need to realise that the majority of that money was probably wasted in our summer recruitment. Because if you look at the quality of player that we've actually brought in, we've spent an awful lot on dross. I think you compare and contrast to the signings that we brought in January. Nadiri, I'm not going to include Scott Wilson in that because he hasn't exactly hit the heights. Romans at left back, and I actually do really like Chuck Wani as a player as well. I think the quality's taken a bit of a step up. Now, just because we spent 40 million quid on players doesn't mean they're going to be good players, as we've seen from the start of the season under the previous manager's tenure. I think that the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope is the fact that we seem to be taking our time, and based on that January window with who we brought in, if we can have a window like that in the summer, at least it's going to add a lot more quality in from a squad standpoint. Regardless of whether you think the manager should be here or not, he is going to be. So it's going to be really important that we repeat the January and not the summer transfer window.
Yeah, and I think if the same team who are involved in that window that were involved in the January window, then yeah, I have a lot of faith that we'll have a more successful window than we did in the summer, because in the summer we managed to sign a player who is no longer with the club now. Like that's a mark of how badly that summer window went. Rothwell's now plying his trade elsewhere, and there are a number of other players who are signed who will not be here come next year as well. Max Aarons came on, which was a pleasant reminder that he is still a player that we have with us, at least for this season. Again, another player who I think is totally unsuited to playing for Rangers. Yeah, I would agree with you, Rob. Like the 3 out of the 4 players who we signed in January are, good for us, have been a mark of, promising things to come. For me, I want to see more of that, and that's why I'm not in the camp of Danny Roll must go or anything insane like that, because you cannot keep sacking managers, especially for no good reason. Like Russell Martin, there was a reason to get rid of him. We had fans of our team cheering opposition goals because they were happy that it meant he would be leaving quicker as a result. So we are definitely not at that stage yet, but it's a thing that Danny Roll is going to have to start learning how to manage games better, because there are still some decisions that are being made mid-game that are questionable. But I've got to give some credit to him in that he can only work with the squad that he's got. And I'll keep coming back to it, but this is a squad of players who, back in October, we were saying was the worst Rangers squad that we had ever seen. I think we've, brought more out of them. We've seen more being brought out of them by Danny Rowe. But nonetheless, it's still a squad of players who I do not think, on the whole, are well suited for Scottish football. I think there's a number of players in there who we can use, who we can build on for the future. But there's a chunk of them who are really not well suited and consistently, unfortunately, have let us down when it comes to important games for us.
Yeah, and I think the frustrating thing is, Mark, as well, we get back to 2 each in that game, but it then gets really weird because you think with 20 minutes to go, the team will be going gung-ho to try and get that third goal. But then it's almost like we repeat the mistakes of the first half where we kind of start to get a little bit disjointed. We don't press them as high up the pitch as we had been doing in that second half. Motherwell get a little bit more confidence and start to play through us again. And it's really difficult to defend players when that sort of stuff happens. The lead up before the break and they went away to Spain was talking about mentality, talking about the desire of the players. And these are going to be the same old questions that come up based on what ultimately happens towards the end of the game, where we give away, a goal to drop a point and kind of lose all 3 points at home against a Motherwell team that, with all due respect, it's the game that you look at out of the 5 that we've got post-split to say we've got to win our home games. So to come away with nothing today is really, really disappointing. And while the result in isolation is hard to take, we still have 4 games left. We've still got to go and play Hearts, and we'd have to go and win at Tynecastle anyway. We would always have to go to Parkhead and beat them there anyway. I think the problem is that we're now relying on other teams doing us a favour. Whereas getting into the game today, at least we knew if we win the next 5 games, we win the league. Now, if we win the next 4 games, we're still going to need at least Hearts to slip up and drop points to us.
I think the thing is, you can afford at least a point that you dropped here and there. If you were to win today, 4 remaining games, now you're sort of running out of strikes, aren't you? Like, this is a point where it's like everyone is a must win. And we need to go in with that mentality anyway. Back to your point with the mentality before, the game management piece for me is where we're getting it wrong. And I think that's where there will be that question on mentality coming to the end of the game. To Andrew's point earlier, in terms of that, when we were 2-2 chances and kind of lost a little bit our way, didn't we? And then Morrow sort of got a bit of grip of the ball, and to be fair, the fellas on the break, they've done it countless times throughout the game. And then from there, our shape of that back four was all over the place. We were all, I don't know where Tav was. Comes in and hits off Fernandez, doesn't it? Button's diving, and Fernandez and Button are sort of at each other, but I can understand why Fernandez went for it, and then Button's going to dive for it because he's a goalkeeper. So it's one of these, obviously, where, but I think for me, just the frustrating part is how we're managing these games out. And the question will always be on mentality when the expectation is on us to win, and like today, we shit the bed. That is a problem. And people will then always question mentality when the pressure's off and we're going to run of games and, no one's really talking about us. We've taken, put in perspective, like December going through to February, it's not real much talk about it. And all of a sudden we're starting to climb up that table. That gap was sort of narrowing week on week. And all of a sudden it's like, well, if we win here, the title could go in our favour. But this is what happens. And how many years have we been talking about this now where we think we're onto something, and then before you know it, we're back in fucking the same position of shit the bed. And that is literally where we are, and that's frustrating. And that will always come back to fans challenging mentality of this squad and even previous squads where big moments come and we don't take them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There was a point I was going to bring to you, Andrew, but it's completely and utterly gone out of my head there. Do you know that? I was trying to keep a wee eye on the comments, but I saw you dealt with something, so it's it's always difficult. It was actually the fact that Gassama finished the game, and I think this is probably where fans will rightly or wrongly start to look at the manager's decision, because we're chasing a game. For me, I would love to have seen Ant-Man come on just for that little bit of pace. The fact that he got an assist against Falkirk, and he looked as if he wanted to get the byline in that game. That was what we needed in that second half. Somebody to inject a little bit of life, because Gassama didn't once try and take on his man, whereas I think at least hopefully Ant-Man probably would have. But to bring on Connor Barron when you're chasing a game, that seemed like it was, we don't want to get beat rather than we're going to go for this and we're going to win. And I think that's probably another decision in this game where, rightly, people will be looking at the manager and questioning him. And I think we need to be fair. Danny Rowe has done a great job with the team to get us back into this position, but it doesn't stop us from thinking that he's infallible. He will make mistakes. He is a young manager. And I think it's right to question him when results don't go, especially when, as armchair managers and fans think that putting on a different player will have an impact in the game. But for me, that's another little thing that I think fans will be questioning tonight is Gasman stays on the pitch, hasn't really contributed for the whole game, but we bring on Connor Barron instead of putting on an attacking player to go for that third goal.
I think, yeah, Connor Barron was a player I wanted to see introduced, but at half time, because he's the kind of player who has the drive and impetus to work hard, dominate the midfield and push us forward. What I don't want to be seeing is bringing on Connor Barron for ostensibly an attacking player in Delo Asgard on the 86th minute, because you are at that point going, lads, let's take the draw. We'll see how things go. We cannot be in a position now where we are comfortable sitting back and accepting draws, especially not at home. These are the games we should be pushing to try and win. We saw that right at the end with Jack Butland throwing himself up in the 95th minute to try and get a goal. And that was to draw the game. Taking Connor Barron off and not throwing on Ant-Man, Skov Olsen, anyone more attack-minded would have been the move there. So yeah, you're right, Rob, that I don't think now's the time to call for the manager's head, because you make mistakes. It happens. I think that was a mistake. You can only hope that you learn from it and get better, because you do not have a lot of patience. We are a team who are starved of success. We're a fan base rather who are really keen to see us start winning stuff again, and to be surrendering points, because that's ostensibly what it looks like, is that we have said we'll just sit back and hope that we can hold on for the draw here. That's what you signal to the team, to the fans, and to Motherwell when you make that kind of substitution. If you throw on attacking players, it's like, okay, Rangers are going to go for this. If you throw on a defensive-minded midfielder, then that's a signal of intent, not just to our team, but to the opposition team as well. You do that at the 85th minute, 86th minute, Motherwell have got nothing to lose at that point. They will absolutely throw stuff forward. They want to get that fourth European slot. So they are going to throw men forward and try and get the win there. And that is going to be something that we can continue to question the manager over what he's doing there. You need to start getting better, and you don't have a lot of opportunity to do so. There's only 4 games left. You need to start winning, and you need to start winning quickly.
Yeah, and we'd won 4 on the bounce coming into this game, Mark, and it just so happens that we've got 4 games left, but we've got a couple of tough ones coming up before we even think about the home game against Hibs and then finishing off the season at Falkirk. We've used we've not used a get out of jail free card, but we've certainly shit the bed enough that we need to win the next 4 games. We do not have any other points dropped in us to if we want to be champions this year. And the next 2 games coming up are going to be difficult games. But let's face it, if we cannot go to Tynecastle and we can't go to that mob across the city and beat them in their stadium, do we deserve to win the title?
No, it's as simple as that. You know what I mean? These are the games that... But with this team, it wouldn't surprise me if we went to Tynecastle and Celtic Park and got wins and then dropped points to Hibs. That is literally the shit we have to put up with week in and week out with this team. Like that team are capable of getting a result. We proved it when we played Hearts at Ibrox, and then we went to Parkhead back in the end of the year and got a win there as well. So we've proven we can do it. It's you just don't know what team's going to turn up. I think that's the concern that I have with this team. But to your point, though, we've got to go and win these 4 games. It's as simple as that. To win this league, we win the 4 games, we win the title. It's as simple as that. So that's where we are. But if we get that win today, then it takes a little bit of pressure off. But at the same time, I think you've got to go in, given where we are and how many games are left, you've got to go in and try to win every one. It'll be a tough one on Monday night. I mean, because they got a result today against 9-man Hibs. But, it's in particular at Tynecastle, it's not the easiest place to go. But to your point, if you want to win the league, these are the places you've got to turn up and get 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, Andrew, the age-old, we've always said that there's going to be twists and turns in these final 5 games. I don't think any of us fans expected there to be a bloody twist like this so early in the 5 games, unfortunately. I think we were hoping a win today, a win at Tynecastle. We could get a draw over there, and then the final 2 games would have been a little bit of a run. How are you feeling? Drop some positivity on us, because it can't be all negative here. Ultimately, it makes it more difficult. We are still in with a very outside chance at this point in time, and it's not in our hands. But let's face it, we've come back from leads before, or gaps like this before, to win a title over the last few games left. So, yeah, drop some positivity, mate.
I don't know why you're coming to me for positivity, man. Like, I'm not Hammerit. I can't do an inspirational speech or anything like that. That's not me. All I will say is that there's 4 points in this. We've seen this season that this squad can come back from far further back. But you're running out of time to do it. The good thing is that the next 2 games are a really good opportunity to take some points over the 2 teams who are currently above us in the league. So, look, lads, it's there for you. You want to win the title. These are the 2 games you need to be taking points from. But you have to go beyond that as well. I think, to your point, you need to get points in all 4 of these games. No more losses, I think, will work for us. We have to get at least a draw, if not a win, in all 4 of these games. And then you're going to have to see where everything else lies, because Hearts and Celtic have got to play each other. Motherwell are going to have a say. I think Hibs will have a say as well. We saw today that they, despite having 2 men sent off, still took Hearts to just a 1-goal win. So there's plenty of TM twists and turns to come for the remainder of the season. The other 3 teams outside of the 3 who are going for the title will have their say as well. So I'm not writing off the league by any stretch of the imagination. It could go to literally anyone in those top 3, because I think all 3 of the teams in the top 3 have it within their own power to either go ahead and grab it for themselves, and equally to throw it away themselves as well. We've seen all 3 of those teams both grasp the opportunity with both hands and throw away the opportunity with both hands as well. So it's going to be a fascinating last 4 games, and the good thing is we don't have too long to wait for the next one, and it's going to be a good one. I'm still, despite everything, I'm still looking forward to it, because I think it will be a good game of football, and I would like to think that Rangers will be motivated to go out and get a result, because they need to. You're up against a team who are top of the league. You've got a point to prove. You're away at a tough home ground, but it's all there, lads. You have the opportunity to go and doing something pretty special. I still think it's there. So go on.
I like that. That was a good rally call, Mark. You looked as if you were going to come back in and say something there, mate.
I was just going to say, I think something that's important though over the next couple of weeks is a fully fit Mike and Moore, and if we get 2 Romans back as well, I think they two, if we can get them fully fit, I don't know how far Romans is away, but Mikey Moore also didn't start today, given he's been carrying this knock. Yeah, in all fairness, I thought he actually played very well. For me, he was man of the match today, given he only played 45, but given how shit the first half was, and everyone was kidding much on a blank canvas going into that second half. But I think the critical piece for me will be Mikey Moore being fully fit and getting Turo Romans back. I think they two will be definitely very influential over these next 4 games if both are back fully fit. And hopefully Mikey Moore, given what we've seen today, is, and obviously Turo Romans, see where he is on the fitness front. But I think he will be absolutely critical as well.
Yeah, I think that's a point that we can't overlook. If that's Mikey Moore half fit, then hopefully we can get him fully fit for Hearts, Celtic and the Hibs games coming up. Because he was the one player that looked like he wanted the ball, would take a man on, everything that. And I don't really want to keep slating him, but I'm going to mention him by name again. Gassama on the right hand side should have been doing. Not once today did he pick that ball up and run at a defender. But I think we've done that one to death. We obviously did this on the Sunday show, myself, Scott, Dougie and Cheryl last week, ahead of the awards ceremony tonight, talking about Player of the Year and stuff like this. I think fantastic reception that the players and management team are probably going to get at that dinner. But before today's result, who would you pick for your Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year, Mark?
Young Player of the Year, Mikey Moore. I think that's an easy one. Player of the Year, probably Fernandes. I think he's probably the one that I've been quite impressed with. I don't think he started too great, but not many did, in all fairness. But I think him or... No, I'm going to go with Fernandes. I think if Romans had been there at the start of the season, he probably would have been. But I think the fact that he's only been here from Jan, I think Fernandes would probably be the one I would give it to. Don't get me wrong, defensively we've not been great the last couple of weeks. However, I think his contribution, his improvement from when he first started to where he is today, for me, that's who I would give it to, both awards in terms of Moore and Fernandes. That's where I stand with that.
Andrew?
I mean, it's tough because the Player of the Year could announce themselves in the next 4 games. Scott Olsen comes on and scores a hat-trick in the next 4 games, then, hey, he's my Player of the Year, But I'm inclined to agree with Mark. I think certainly Mikey Moore, the Young Player of the Season, because he's an 18-year-old kid. And he is... We've seen plenty of loanees come up to Scotland and go, lads, this is not for me. I'm getting kicked about by guys who are like twice the size of me and they're getting paid about 10% of what I'm getting paid. This is ridiculous. I'm not having any of this, and just disappear. He's a player who has come up from the Premier League, and he's not the only player who come up from the English leagues this season, but he's the only one who's really seized it and gone forward and had the impetus to try and make himself a defining factor in these games. So definitely my younger Player of the Year is Mikey Moore. Player of the Year, Fernandes, I think is the right call. There's arguments for Nico Raskin as well. Arguably, probably one of our most consistent players. Maybe Jack Butland as well for his performances at the start of this season, when in a team that looked like it was going to leak goals from every direction, he was the only one who kept us in games at times. He was the only one who kept us with draws as opposed to losses in those initial 9 games. The previous manager, who will not mention by name. But yeah, Manny Fernandes, I think, has been the most consistent senior player at the league in terms of our league performance so far. He's the one I'd be inclined to go for as well. So basically, I'm going to agree with Mark for both of them. Yeah, just nice and easy.
That's good. And you both agreed with me on the past pod, so that's fine. I quite like that. That's good. Well, it is never ever easy coming on and doing these things after a result like that, especially when it's one that punches you in the gut like it did today. But I do need to thank you both for coming on. Thank you for joining us share the pain, Andrew. It is much appreciated. I don't think me and Mark would have got through that without you.
I couldn't leave you by yourselves, boys. Now, hey, always a pleasure to come on for the Sunday show as well, where we get the different intro video. It's all good fun. So yeah, despite Rangers, managing to make us miserable, I still think that we can come on and have some fun at least, and try and bring ourselves back up a little bit. And hopefully, we've helped some of the folk out there watching as well, because yeah, Rangers do not make it easy for us.
They do not. They do not. Mark, as always, mate, thank you for joining us and putting yourself through that tonight.
Sorry, thanks for the therapy session, and just send the ball to my house, mate. I'll get paid. So it's definitely helped, because I was quite ranty for an hour or two after I thought I'd calmed down, which this has definitely helped. But no, it's always great being on with you, bud.
And if anybody is wondering where the Queen of Four Lads is, Cheryl, she's actually at the Player of the Year Awards dinner tonight, so I can't wait for a report on that to see how that goes. So I think we might have got the better end of the stick tonight, to be honest, Val, in attending that, but we'll see. Before we finish, I need to say another massive thank you to all the sponsors of Four Lads: Rhino Express, Cloudview Fire Protection and Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions, CSD Air Conditioning, Candide and RYDC, as well as our partners over at Black Rooster and Art of Gold. The Baldies will be back with the flagship tomorrow night. All that's left for me to do is say thank you for everybody listening to us, for tuning in to watch live, and listening back to the pod. We really appreciate the support, and hope that you continue to share it online. Fingers crossed, when we are back next time, we are speaking about a positive result against Hearts. Thank you.
The Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.